operating in the United States, the rules on environmental, the rules on traceability, we have OSHA, we have all these different great rules that are in place to do the bare minimum, an absolute bare minimum, and to maintain that standard. Cotton's no different. USDA, one of the reasons that cotton is in so high demand globally is that we can trace every bale of U.S. grown cotton all the way back to the gin. They have a PBI number, which is I think what you're mentioning, and so we as a company can have 100% traceability on where our raw material is coming from.
Welcome to Clothing Culture, a fashion industry podcast at the intersection of technology and innovation. I'm Emily Lane.
And I'm Bret Schnitker. We speak with experts and disruptors who are moving the industry forward and discuss solutions to real industry challenges.
Clothing Culture is produced by Stars Design Group, a global design and production house with more than 30 years of experience. Welcome back to another episode of Clothing Culture. We have a wonderful conversation lined up for you today. We've invited on our sofa talks here Davis Warlick, who is the COO of Parkdale Mills. Parkdale Mills is a legacy in the industry. And of course, Davis himself is a legacy in the industry. Parkdale Mills is one of the largest mill groups in the Western Hemisphere, specialty in yarn, cotton-based consumer products, and advanced materials. Bret and I had the extreme pleasure of touring one of the mills a few months ago, and we were absolutely blown away by the level of innovation that this group has embraced and their commitment to United States manufacturing, sustainability, transparency. This group has so many great things going on that we thought everybody out there needs to hear what is happening at Parkdale Mills. Hi.
Emily, thank you. Thank you, Bret, for having me.
It's great to have you here.
So, Davis, you are you come from a generation of people committed to Parkdale Mills, and you are third generation.
Correct. Being
at the top of this company. Okay, I want to know a little bit about the background of the company, but I also want to know, when did you go, this is going to be my business?
And was it your choice? Or did Dad go, hey, this is where you're going?
It's a good start. I'd have to go all the way back, and I think about growing up in Gaston County, Gastonia, North Carolina, where we're headquartered and where we've been headquartered since 1916. But Gastonia used to be the combed capital of the world. And so when we started, when Parkdale was started in 1916, there was 150 mills alone in Gaston County. And Gaston County is not the size of St. Louis. It's a small town. So it's always been a kind of a mega center for textiles. And so Parkdale was just another one of the mills. And my granddad lived in the neighborhood where the mill was, and has a great founder story but he was just a high school kid riding his bike down the neighborhood, worked in the mills in the summer, worked at the first Parkdale mill in the summer. It was a mill that was owned by most of the neighbors. Again, there was a mill on almost every corner in Gaston County. So he ended up going to war, came back, went to NC State, and kind of returned back to Gaston County with this college degree, and ended up running our business for the owner, Mr. Robinson, for 40, 50 years. And then ended up buying out the other shareholders in the 80s. And that's kind of the founder story for us. My father married my mother. He was starting his own career at Milliken, which is another great textile company. And one day my granddad, I think, called Andy, and who's my father, and said, hey, I'd like for you to come work with me. And I think he wanted to have his own career. I think my granddad wanted to have a life with his granddaughter. And so that's kind of the start of the partnership. So second generation was Andy, and then I just grew up in the business. I grew up in the business, had two great role models, Duke Kimbrell, who was my grandfather, and then my father, Andy Warlick. So that was my exposure to the family business. I think everybody that's in a family business, you grow up in it. I mean, the stats, 90% of business is family business. And so a lot of people grow up around the business, and I was no different. My kids today go to the office with me on Saturdays. But I think to your point, when did I know it was what I wanted to do? I will say one side note. This was where I think I always really enjoyed the business. In kindergarten, you write the books, what I want to do when when you get older. And most of the kids in my class, fireman, police officer, astronaut. Even at 5 years old, I put president of Parkdale Mills, and I drew a picture of this autonomous lint vehicle called Blinky. And so my mom actually has it framed now. So I always had that interest in the business, but I think really the passion came from, I think, two places. One, when I was 16 years old, first job, worked first shift in our mill in Gastonia, and was a part of the team, got my paycheck. That first week of cleaning air washers and filtration, 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. on first shift. I think when I received that paycheck for the first time, plant manager shook my hand. The pride that I had working with the team was a feeling that I've always had with me. So I think that was that was like a drug to me. Being a part of the team, making something. The machines, the people. So I think that was probably the first. And then the second was after every summer working in one of our mills and even in college, I think the second was I graduated from business school, time to start my career. Decided I wanted to go work at Parkdale. Day one, I went to go work again right on the floor. And I had a really good mentor. He was the best plant manager that we had.
We met him, didn't we?
Tad Rogers. And he just is so important about mentorship. But that was a make or break kind of moment for me. I was deciding that career, had a lot of hunger and curiosity. And to have somebody like him mentor and fuel my fire, I think that was one of the key moments for me that I really want to be in this industry. This is what I love to do. And he was able to kind of stoke that fire. So I think those two moments, and then, I think every day I'm reassured that this is what I'm supposed to do, because I absolutely love what I do. We have the best people, the best team. It's an incredible culture. And so, I'm kind of reminded that I did make a great decision when I did.
We're absolutely thrilled that you're here.
Yeah, for sure. It's wild. Our industry's always changing. It's not the easiest industry in the world, for sure. What are the biggest challenges, from the point that you were mentored and brought in? Obviously, the world's changed pretty dramatically from there. What do you see as the biggest challenges? And then also, is there anything that's kind of consistent, that has remained consistent with all the evolution that we're seeing in our industry?
I think I'd probably start with what's been consistent. And I can speak for what I've seen in the 20 years was consistent, at least in our business. And, that's putting the customer at the heart of our organization. And that's one of the things, the founder story that we were talking about. Most of our investments, most of our decisions have really been, around either our people or, for our customers. And I think that's always been consistent. I've seen that, how we invest, how we think. We try to, find solutions for either the people on the front lines of our plants or the front lines of our customers. So I think that's always stayed the same. And I think that's a really good business model to take care of your customers. And I think there is a reason why that's the number one guiding principle for us as a company that's really lasted over time, is to put the customer at the heart of the organization. Investment, I think that's one thing that stayed consistent. You have to continually invest. At our company, we reinvest a lot back into the business for automation, for innovation, for new products for our customers. So that has stayed consistent as a company. Industry's changed a lot, I think, in 20 years.
Yeah.
I think so much of it has changed because really two reasons in my mind. One, the telephone, technology. In the last 20 years, we have the iPhone. So easy to be able to shop now. Push, click of a button, you're able to buy apparel, and the things about the traceability, the visibility into supply chains. I think that's changed a lot in the last 20 years, and it impacts the manufacturing side. And then the other thing's probably the transition to synthetics. Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, the market share for synthetics was probably less than 50%. And now it's 70% of the global market share is synthetic. So what we've had to do as a company to accommodate that and invest in blend lines and different types of machines to be able to handle different fibers, I think that's probably been the biggest change.
Interesting. In terms of fiber production, the U.S. is second in the world in terms of cotton growing, fiber crops or whatever.
I think we'd be fourth today.
Oh, we're fourth today, so it's evolved a little bit.
We got displaced by Brazil in the past year.
Interesting.
But you've got, we're about 15%. We do 12 to 15 million bales a year. China is probably 25% at number one, India number two, and Brazil
that's
just
wild.
past the U.S.
So how much of that from the cotton growing and export of the fiber itself, how much of that translates into spinning, and how much do you guys use for domestic versus export? And
I think as an industry, again, it's anywhere from 12 to 15 million bales that the U.S. grows. And there's really two types of cotton grown in the U.S. 95%'s upland, which is what we consume. And then like 5%'s Pima.
Pima Supima,
it's an ELS. It's longer typically than 1.5 inches. Very smaller, and that's kind of grown out west. And so our consumption comes from upland, to our mills. And so all of our mills consume 100% cotton grown from the U.S. The industry as a whole, the cotton industry exports almost all of it. We used to be as an industry a lot more cotton-based in terms of textile mills and yarn manufacturers. You used to see 3 or 4 million bales, 5 million bales years ago consumed domestically by the mills. Now that number's less. Some of it, again, has to do with polyester demand, but most of it's exported. I mean, the U.S. cotton is in high demand globally.
Yeah, sure.
We do a good job growing cotton in the United States. We have the USDA that classes every bale, so traceability, quality, all of that is able to be verified globally, and so there's a lot of demand for the U.S. grown cotton.
And how many of your units are located in the U.S. and how many do you have any offshore?
We do. On our textile business, our yarn manufacturing business, which is our core legacy business, we operate in 8 different states in about 6 different countries. So currently we have a very exciting investment for yarn manufacturing in Honduras that we're underway. But we're in Colombia, Mexico, Honduras, and then we're in multiple states in the U.S.
And how much of your production is cotton versus synthetic now? Is that following the trend? Are you having to reshift and follow that trend also?
Absolutely. And again, what have our customers wanted?
Yeah.
What do the consumers want? That transition, they want performance, they want polyester, they want nylons. And so we've had to introduce that. We've had to change and adapt, or die. And so we've certainly consumed more poly today than probably we ever have.
You talk about investing in your business, and one of the things that we've had an opportunity to see firsthand is the amount of innovation, automation that you've brought into your environment. It's pretty extraordinary.
For a mill, it was like Blade Runner. I mean, I'm talking to robots as they're moving up and down the aisles, and they stop to greet you.
They're very polite.
Which was pretty crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, with the big blue eyes, I think, or something. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the some of the measures that you've put in place, the automation that you've embraced, and the benefits that you're seeing as a result.
Thank you for those comments about our facility. We take a lot of pride in our facilities, obviously. I think we've always been early adopters of innovation. And it starts back at the top with who I mentioned, Duke, and certainly with Andy, who's our CEO and chairman now, as a culture, we need to be first adopters of automation and innovation. And so we were, a couple examples, we were the first textile mill in the United States to have open-end spinning. That was back in the 70s. Mm-hmm. And then we were the first mill to have HVAC, industrial HVAC in a textile mill. And that was in the 80s. And we've continued to invest. You saw the robots.
Yeah.
We continue to invest on technology that makes our quality better, the speeds to go faster. And so we're always wanting to have close relationships with our machine manufacturers on the latest, greatest technologies. We're currently doing investment on autonomous vehicles. You saw some probably in our Gaffney facility. And so we've developed a culture to be early adopters of innovation and automation. And I think it's one of the main reasons why we've been around for over 100 years, because that's a primary focus, even from our shareholders, is to put money back into the business, into our facilities, to reduce costs, to improve quality. And a lot of that's come through our investments in automation.
And it helps you understand the American, kind of mindset. Not many people want to do a lot of labor-intensive things today. You can hire a lot more technicians if you have innovation, and that helps keep you going forward, right?
Absolutely.
And so you definitely see that happening when you're walking through that massive facility we walked through.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some technologies that are on the horizon that you're looking at?
I think as an industry, we're always looking for something that improves quality. We're always looking and trying to solve solutions for our customers, work backwards from our customers on, hey, what are you saying? What are the consumers doing? How do we service you better? How do we grow with you? How do we automate and innovate for our customers? And so a lot's been in sustainability, different aspects of sustainability in the last couple of years. We've seen a lot of innovation coming in the material space in sustainability. And then as an industry as a whole, with AI now that is becoming so prevalent, is that going to help downstream processes in the textile supply chain? With AI, we're hearing about sewing and automation in sewing and finishing and things like that. That seems exciting, and anything that's good for the supply chain, is good for us. And so seeing some of the advancements downstream, I think is very, very exciting.
Yeah, I was kind of blown away. When you talk about sustainability, there's been a number of conversations, right? There's a lot of people apprehensive about the word sustainability. There's two sides to the fence about, do we have an issue in our environment or don't we? But you kind of took sustainability, as I walked through that mill, to a new level and a different mindset, where you said, look, sustainability is not only good for the environment, but it's good for the bottom line. You walk through that entire plant, and then at the very end, what the balance leftover stuff becomes food for cattle.
Yep.
Yeah.
The pucks at the very end. And I'm just like, wow, this is such a brilliant thought process, because there is no waste almost, right?
Besides the canteen waste.
Right.
That goes to the landfill, that's it.
A crazy preservation of waste and utilization all the way through that chain. And then even you're doing ear swabs with real short staple fibers that you can't.
Correct.
It goes in a million different ways,
Yes.
And you're just thinking the utilization. This is a model for a lot of companies in terms of sustainability, because it helps the bottom line, it helps preserve profit, and it helps.
It maximizes
improve.
that resource.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. In fact, Bret, you've set up a question for me really well. I was very impressed by the fact that you are a zero waste manufacturing facility. And I'd love for you to help people understand what that all means. As Bret mentioned, there's all of these different ways that byproducts are then recreated into other products. Can you break that down?
It's listening to Bret talk, I think, and I was so happy to hear that y'all picked that up. But I'd have to be honest, before sustainability even became a word, that was just ingrained. And a lot of that has to do with trying to be cost competitive.
Right.
Lean, if you go back to lean and eliminating waste, a lot of that came from trying to eliminate waste and trying to be low cost in a global market that's very, very competitive. But there's another aspect of that. It was just the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. We take a lot of pride in the communities in which our mills operate in, and so there was a pride sense there. Now sustainability is much more mainstream. It's more in vogue, and we're continuing doing those same types of processes. Now they have different terminologies and things for the processes that we've had in place for 20 and 30 years, because it was the right thing to do. Utilizing the waste that you mentioned, that was one of the ways that we got into the consumer products business. Trying to control the waste stream and understand where our waste was going led us to the consumer products division. We acquired a company in 2008 that utilized our byproduct waste, the short fibers that Bret mentioned. We have to clean organic material out of the cotton, and that can be reprocessed into many things. And so that's what led us to our acquisition of U.S. Cotton in 2008. And we're always trying to figure out how to reprocess and how to reuse.
There's some of the applications include cleanup when there's an environmental a spill or something along that lines. There's cattle being fed.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some other surprising?
That's the dust, actually. So you mentioned you're so keen. You've got it. That was dust. So all the dust that is eliminated from that cotton, we're able to extract, and we put them into briquettes, and they're great protein for local farmers. And so that is
and coming to a store near you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, with milk.
I think you need I
think it's dust and blueberries that's actually
absolutely
happening coming soon. So.
Oh, gosh.
The other thing that was amazing, too, is this whole traceability thing. So, with the Uyghur issue in China, traceability of bale has been huge, right? Figuring that out. And so people are like, how much, are the Chinese importing certain amounts of U.S. cotton? And there's been this whole conversation. This is just inherent in your supply chain, this whole traceability from a bale level, too.
It is. And I don't want to take necessarily credit for that. But
take credit.
Well, but just
no one else will say anything.
Just by operating in the United States, there's so many great textile companies. There's so many great manufacturers in the United States, and just operating in the United States, the rules on environmental, the rules on traceability. We have OSHA. We have all these different great rules that are in place. To do the bare minimum, absolute bare minimum, and to maintain that standard. Cotton's no different. USDA, one of the reasons that cotton is in so high demand globally is that we can trace every bale of U.S. grown cotton all the way back to the gin. They have a PBI number, which is I think what you're mentioning, and so we as a company can have 100% traceability on where our raw material is coming from, and which farm it came from or which gin it came from.
That's an amazing story.
It is, and we have great farmers, throughout the Southeast. Some of them we do deal directly with, but some of the issues that are going on currently with traceability, I think that's a huge benefit of using U.S. grown cotton.
How much of your, with what's going on in Europe with the whole digital passport and all these eco-friendly, initiatives that are going on, do you find an increasing opportunity in the market in Europe for U.S. cotton or spun, yarn to convert?
I'd like to think so. I think just in general across, again, you mentioned some of the things that have changed, the telephone, I mentioned the iPhone. I think everybody now today is more educated. Traceability really, I think it's always been around at more of a smaller scale, a smaller niche kind of conversation. But it's going more mainstream now. People are able to understand more through technology and where their products are coming from, and people are kind of demanding that. And I think that will play very, very well into the demand for U.S. cotton and products made with U.S. cotton, such as our yarn and products that we make in our mills.
Yeah, you just have such an amazing story. I think it would resonate a lot with what's happening for the initiatives in Europe today that we saw.
Yeah. With some of the dynamics that are happening on a global scale right now, are there any concerns about demand for U.S. cotton shifting?
I think there's always going to be strong demand for cotton. I think to reframe the conversation, I think it's a fiber conversation in general. Today, polyester and synthetics make up 70%. Roughly 70% of the global fiber demand. Cotton's anywhere between 20 to 25% of that, and then you have some other natural fibers in there. But demand for fiber is going to continue to grow globally. So we either have to increase the acreage globally, or more market share probably will go on the synthetic side. And so I think as long as that we can grow it and have acreage dedicated to it. Currently, on average, probably 10 million acres in the U.S. for cotton. We'll have to keep up with fiber demand to continue to grow it, or it'll be displaced by a synthetic or a polyester or another type of material. So,
in terms of natural fiber, the U.S. is uniquely positioned because of our water reserves. I mean, cotton's a thirsty crop. So you definitely see that as there are challenges elsewhere in the world, Pakistan, other places, for water reserves, or India, America's uniquely positioned to be able to feed that or water that thirsty crop, right?
I would agree with that. Absolutely.
So
And we're good at growing it.
Yeah, we are.
We're good at growing it, and I think we have great farmers throughout the Southeast and Texas and places like that. And I don't see the demand going. I think fiber consumption will continue to grow. And
even though the percentage might shift, consumption goes up.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Are there some differences between U.S. cotton and cotton grown in other parts of the world?
And I know you'll like wine.
Yes.
And so it's like wine. I think it's like wine.
The body.
Exactly.
The legs.
The way that y'all talk about wine is how, I talk about cotton, I guess. The fiber properties vary even within the United States.
What are the key features that you would tout about U.S. cotton in general?
I think, I think there's the main ones, but the length, the strength of the fiber, a lot of it has to do with the traceability, how we farm. But for the most part, upland cotton grown in the South has an identity. You know what you're probably going to get, but seasons change, the weather changes. You may have some storms that make a crop differ year to year. But for the most part, upland U.S. cotton is a cotton that can run in almost all spun yarn applications. You have the ELS conversation. You think about Pima, you think about Egyptian. That takes a certain type of soil, certain type of environment to grow. And so that's one of the differences. But I think every growing region has a little bit of a different quality based on the soil and where it's grown.
Wow, it is an art, just like
it
wine.
It is an art, just like
this.
wine.
You've mentioned a lot about synthetics and the demand increase for our synthetics, and you've been very behind a huge initiative that is seeking to solve the problems that some of these synthetic fibers create. We've had a conversation a few episodes ago with a partner of yours, Andrea Ferris from CiCLO, and you're invested in the success of that company. Tell us a little bit about how you came into that picture.
Andrea's story, and thank you for that, for having her on. She's fantastic. She's our partner, and she's the founder of CiCLO. Her story that she shared when she was trying to source uniforms for McDonald's and try to find a solution to the synthetic microfiber and pollution issue is kind of similar to ours. We started an advanced materials division. We saw that polymer and fiber was going to be important in terms of technology. Polyester was gaining market share. And so we wanted to develop a division that studied fiber and polymer technology. As insiders in the business, similar to how she was an insider sourcing uniforms, we started converting more of our facilities over to consume synthetics and understanding what a synthetic is. It's a petroleum-based product. It's a great, durable type of fiber. But, we knew that environmentally, it wouldn't biodegrade.
Right.
And we understood that there was microfiber shedding that was happening that could potentially be here forever. And so we wanted to try to solve that for our customers and go out and try to develop a solution to this polyester
problem.
It is a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The polyester, we were understanding the implications and the issues early on as insiders. And so we were trying to find a solution. And that's how we ended up finding Andrea, actually, and found CiCLO, and we partnered with them. And I will say it's one of the most exciting, it is the most exciting thing that I've ever worked on. My passion for what we're trying to do with CiCLO is at an all-time high. And so I appreciate y'all's support in the technology And I think y'all can see the type of impact that it can potentially have.
Oh, for sure. It should be ubiquitous. We should spare no time rolling that out in mass because the problem is not going away. It's like you mentioned, the rise on synthetic production from 55 to 65 to 75. Now they're saying 85% of manufacturing of textiles is going to be in synthetics. This is an issue. We have to solve it, and you have the solution. And it's not expensive, and it's easy to implement.
And it improves the end product.
There's just so many things, and it's just, the impatience of seeing that become everywhere sits with me literally every day. I'm not even invested in your business, and I'm like, holy smoke, people have to know more about this, and it's got to be implemented, and now.
That's what keeps me up at night as well, is that exact thing.
That was my next question. What keeps you up at night? So.
That is what
reading.
I think that is what keeps me up at night. But on Andrea's podcast, you mentioned Holy Grail.
It is the Holy Grail,
and I appreciate you saying that. And I think when we were researching CiCLO, having our insider information, kind of how consumers act, how the needs for brands and consumers, we kind of said the Holy Grail would be, hey, how do we give brands and consumers what they want in terms of fashion, durability, cost, at the same time create this impact?
Yeah.
And that to me was the Holy Grail, to be able to solve a huge problem that we have in the environment. But to be able to do it at scale, to be able to go into existing supply chains that already exist, to be able to take a technology and elevate it on low-cost equipment globally, anywhere around the world, and to be able to do it in a cost-effective way. To me, when we found CiCLO, that was the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
5-6 years later, we're there.
Yeah.
And I think we've really solved that. And we have an incredible team. Cheryl Smyer leads our CiCLO team. She's done an amazing job globally setting up supply chains, being able to drive costs down so that we can take to consumers a way to do better. These consumers and brands, they want to do well. They want to do good for the environment. But, it needs to be cost effective. It needs to be scalable.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
There's a lot.
As in everything that we do. Yeah. I mean, you're never going to see change on an eco-friendly or sustainable front unless it becomes scalable and affordable. That's one of the challenges we've had in our industry forever, at all levels, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You've done that. This is a nominal difference in cost. It is an invisible process in terms of the ultimate result, really, from a tactile experience or a implementation process. And the result is biodegradability, right? That's just, and no microparticulates. It's crazy. It just needs to be everywhere.
We hope it is. That's what we're working on around the clock with a lot of enthusiasm to get this globally as a solution for synthetics. I think more and more news is coming out about the impact of microfibers in our ecosystem, in our own bodies.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of reports about what we're consuming. And I think
I took a shower today and it just stayed on the surface. It did nothing soaked in. I got so much plastic in my body.
I think those things are in our favor though for CiCLO technology as people become more aware, not only on the environmental side, but on the health impact. I think that'll help CiCLO expand to where you and I both think it should be.
Yes, for sure.
You've developed the Fiber Innovation Center in Belmont, right?
I'm helped to kind of co-lead that.
Okay.
With the Textile
You're
Technology
involved
Center. Passionate about it. I'm a
Right.
fan of what they're doing at the Textile Technology Center in Gaston County.
Is there anything on the horizon that you see coming out of this incredible innovation center?
I think there's a ribbon cutting ceremony coming up, but that was born after the pandemic. The Textile Technology Center has been a resource for the whole industry. It helped us develop iterations of CiCLO. So it's been a really good resource for development for the entire industry. But one thing I think that'll be different about the Fiber Innovation Center is it really is going to focus on polymer and fiber technology. And so brands, the military, different universities, academics can go develop polymer technology, patented polymer technology, and put it into yarn, put it into fabrics, all under in one place. And that's something that the industry, hasn't had in the past.
It's a playground.
It should be a playground, and it should help innovate faster, quicker, and to keep some of the great technologies that we develop in fibers and polymers here in the United States.
Yeah, I'm really glad to see that. We've kind of exported so much in this industry offshore. And we've had a lot of conversations about how do we bring it back onshore. And the first step is bringing the knowledge base back onshore,
Absolutely.
And then the next step is obviously continuing what you've done in spinning units and technology and innovation into other aspects of that supply chain.
Yeah. People always say, remember how the country was September 12th, 2001. Everybody was united and very patriotic. During the pandemic, the textile industry in the United States, every textile mill, every spinner, every sewing operator was united to help the country and really got to see how awesome our U.S. industry is. And to your point about bringing it back, it would be fantastic to see that every day in the United States, because over time, during that period of time where we were making PPE and as a whole industry, you started to see the speeds, production cost, things like that start coming down because we have great mills here. We have great industry here still. It's just a little fragmented.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities.
Fragmented. I think fixing that, really weighing into innovation today, we're at a time in history where that's possible. Years ago, 5 years ago, it would have been more challenging. Today, there's certainly opportunities to do that.
With gaps in the supply chain being a challenge to overcome with Made in America, are there other challenges that you see as things that we need to develop solutions for?
I like the simple approach to it, the pragmatic, simple approach. And we have a great textile base in the United States still. But, only 15% of what we import is from the Western Hemisphere. And so you think about where we are actively involved in supply chains, where there's rule-based trade agreements, for instance, CAFTA, USMCA, Colombia. Those are, if you think about the cost and you think about some of the shipping issues, moving things back to the Western Hemisphere, great way to re-engage the United States and grow the United States, because the United States is already active in some of those supply chains. We export a lot of our yarn to the CAFTA region. We export a lot of yarn to USMCA, down into South America. And so transitioning some market share, brands and other companies can move some of their production, not just back to the United States yet, but to the hemisphere.
Yeah.
Is a great first step to be able to build base in the United States one step at a time.
It's amazing as manufacturers, in our industry, we always look east. We never look south. Rarely look south, I think growing that conversation is really. You
look at the lead times, inventory, you look at the sustainability conversation, it makes complete sense. Cost.
Yeah.
It makes complete sense to source in the Western Hemisphere, and they're incredible manufacturers, fully vertical manufacturers in the Western Hemisphere. I think it's just knowing that those types of manufacturers exist in the Western Hemisphere, that it's not just basics, which is kind of what the hemisphere's been
known for a long time.
But so I think that as the hemisphere can grow, that's really going to benefit the United States.
That's great. Well, before we wrap this conversation today, I have one last question, unless you have anything.
I'm good.
You're good. Okay. So there's a lot of positive things that we've talked about on the horizon. What's your greatest hope that you think is relatively achievable in the near future?
We talked about bringing manufacturing back to the United States, that's something obviously that we're always passionate about. I understand, from when I was 16 years old, that pride that I got when I got that check from the plant manager, to be able to have that opportunity for so many in other communities, and just the power of having a manufacturing type of job. Our industry, every job that we create has a 3-to-1 multiplier on it. And so I am hopeful, to continue growing that in the United States, continue growing the manufacturing base. And I'm extremely hopeful and excited about, what we talked about earlier, about solving this microfiber issue, creating awareness around the microfiber issue, and leveraging our technology to really solve a really big problem. So those are the two passions, I think, that I really hope to see happen in the next 2 to 5 years.
I have no doubt you'll be right on the ground floor helping to make all those things happen.
I hope so.
Thank you, Davis, for joining us today in this wonderful conversation on clothing culture. How can people find you?
Oh, man.
Personal phone number.
Brett,
address,
Address, yes, absolutely.
Parkdale Mills has a website.
They do,
and
we do.
CiCLO has a website. And there's
Yeah.
some great new content coming available soon to promote all the things that are happening there. You don't forget to subscribe to stay apprised of upcoming episodes of Clothing Culture.